It's late. Your apartment hums like a tired refrigerator. The city outside your window keeps its own pulse headlights threading the dark, a neighbor's TV arguing with no one. You stare at a glowing screen you promised you'd ignore after 10 p.m. Therefore, your brain keeps chewing. In the group chat, you typed something brave, then watched 3 dots disappear, and silence. At work, you pitched an idea. Later, someone repeated it and got the nod. You're not angry, you tell yourself, just tired. Invisible is not a superpower. It's a slow eraser. So you do what careful people do. You keep the peace, therefore you keep quiet, therefore they assume you're fine. But the ache won't clock out. It keeps raising its hand in the back row of your chest. You consider texting a mentor. Not in the Slack channel, too many eyes. A DM is safer. That's the rule in a world where the wrong question can get screenshotted and forward buttoned straight into your performance review. What if I'm missing something? You type, then delete. You try again. I believe in God, but lately I feel like I'm only good at managing appearances. Draft unsent, you sit back and let the blue light wash your face. You want change, but you also want control. You want answers, but you also want to keep your name clean. You're not a villain, you're responsible. You've learned to survive by reading rooms and lowering your price. Yet a whisper keeps threading the noise. There has to be more than maintenance. Here's a frame break. What would you risk to move from night to light before we go ancient? Stay in this room another beat. Think about the times you've waited for the hallway to empty before knocking on the door that mattered. You didn't want to be seen wanting. Wanting can make you look weak or worse, needy. Therefore you scheduled your longing for after hours. But desire denied doesn't die. It calcifies into cynicism, and cynicism is just exhausted hope dressed in armor. Roll the camera back 2,000 years. Jerusalem. Narrow alleys breathe out day heat into a darker, cooler hush. Somewhere a dog barks. Oil lamps bruise the walls with amber. A man steps out of a respected home and pulls his cloak a little tighter. He is not running away, he is running toward. He is a leader, a teacher, a man whose resume can open doors, therefore he knows which doors to avoid during daylight. He chooses the hours when questions can travel without an entourage. He walks the alley with a practiced body, shoulders balancing dignity and caution. He is the kind of person who can explain complex things to simpler minds. But tonight his mind is the crowded one. He has watched a Galilean rabbi heal people who weren't on the guest list. He has heard words that do not collapse under cross-examination. He has a name that counts in rooms that count, Nicodemus, and yet his status can't quiet his soul. Respect has given him a platform. It has not given him peace. The door he finds is not gilded. The room he enters is not grand. The conversation he will have is not safe for press releases. He opens with compliments, polite, accurate, low risk. Therefore, he expects a measured exchange, some iron sharpening iron among professionals. But the reply will swerve his categories. It will not be another step on a ladder. It will be a new ladder entirely. Not better habits, but new birth. Not polish, but life. Hold that thought. Flash forward just a few minutes. It's still the first part of our story, but I want you to see the far shore we're rowing toward. Afternoon light slants across a garden near a place of execution. A man who used to prefer shadows now carries weight in daylight, myrrh and aloes, expensive and heavy love, measured in pounds. He helps wrap a broken body with care that does not ask for applause. The same feet that walked Jerusalem's alleys now take deliberate steps toward a tomb. Fear will not get the final say about him. Faith will. Back to the night. Back to the room where a leader admits without admitting that he wants more than tidy certainty. You know this room. You've stood in its doorway, 2 late-night questions in a late-stage life. Improvement offers a spreadsheet. Your heart wants a transplant. You don't want to be manipulated, you do want to be made new. But new is disruptive. New threatens your balance. New says step into the light and let the light tell the truth. So you hover over send. You rehearse outcomes. You bargain with your image as if it were a shareholder. You remember the last time you spoke up and the way silence answered. You remember what it cost to keep quiet and the way your chest felt afterwards smaller. You remember that your deepest conversations rarely happen at noon. They tend to happen when the dishes are done, when the apartment hums, when the city sighs, when the shields are down. This is why the story of Nicodemus is not a museum piece. It's a mirror. He came by night because daylight has politics. He came because longing finally outran image management. He came because questions are not disloyal. They are doors. And sometimes the only way to honor your position is to admit your hunger. He did not know that his first step would be the seed of his last step, that the private question would ripen into public courage. But seeds do what seeds do when they meet good soil. Therefore, here is our first small practice before we follow him any farther. Choose one light move this week. DM the mentor. Ask the hard question kindly and clearly. Book the conversation you've delayed because you feared the screenshot more than the stagnation. Fear shrinks in light. Longing grows into life. Morning in Jerusalem is a choreography. Market stalls unlatch. Priests cross courtyards like white sails. Dust lifts where sandals agree with the road. In that clockwork, Nicodemus moves with the quiet authority of someone the city already knows. Heads tilt. Doors open. Scribes make space. He is a Pharisee, disciplined, devout, a caretaker of Israel's memory and a ruler among rulers on the Sanhedrin. Therefore he knows how to walk without tripping alarms. He understands procedure, precedent, public optics. If wisdom is a garment, he wears it tailored. He was formed by habits that would humble most of us. Prayer at set hours, scripture by heart, generosity down to the herb garden. Therefore he trusts the scaffolding that has held him since youth. But scaffolding is not a home. Success can organize your life so tightly that there's no room left for a living God to surprise you. Nicodemus can parse arguments about Sabbath limits. What keeps him up is not a footnote, it's the low, steady thrum of unmet hunger. He has answers by training but questions by experience. Watch the daytime version of him at work. A petition is read, voices measure tone, a vote is floated. He calibrates. He is not a villain. He is a steward. Therefore, his caution is a form of care for his people, for the tradition, for the fragile peace. But caution can turn into a moat around the very castle where God once lived with you. He has seen a young rabbi from Galilee do things that won't fit in his filing system. Bodies made whole, shame lifted like fog, words that cut without cruelty. Respect tells him to observe. Hunger tells him to seek. Pharisee does not mean hypocrite by job description. It means set apart, aimed toward holiness in the mess of ordinary life. Therefore, Nicodemus's life has edges and guardrails. But holiness without heart becomes a mask you forget you're wearing. He feels the weight of his title when he tries to pray like a child. He can summon the right phrase, but the phrase doesn't always summon God. He senses that the map he loves may not be the territory. To admit this in daylight would be to invite headlines. Therefore, he schedules curiosity for when the city sleeps. Why the night? Not only fear, strategy. At night, he can ask without forcing subordinates to pick sides. At night, the conversation can breathe without slogans. At night, the man who is always the teacher can finally be a student again. Status promises safety, therefore it teaches you to never be seen learning. But the soul only grows where it's willing to be taught. Nicodemus is senior enough to know the cost of being wrong in public and honest enough to suspect he's not entirely right in private. Picture a modern parallel, the senior partner slipping into a beginner's class, sitting in the back row with a notebook. He's the one who usually answers questions, therefore the act of asking feels like exposure. But exposure is where healing happens. The public version of Nicodemus knows the right introductions. The private version rehearses ways to start a conversation without losing face. Rabbi, we know. Might sound like strategy, but beneath the veneer is a man who longs to be known by God more than admired by peers. There's another layer here, the one no resume mentions: grief. He has likely watched people he loves get better at obeying and worse at being alive. He has likely watched his own heart keep the rules while stiff-arming joy. Therefore, the stories about Jesus do not land like rumors. They land like rain on a roof that remembers the shape of water. He has seen religion done well. He wants to see life done new. He steps into the alley because something inside him has decided that managing impressions is too expensive a way to buy peace. So he waits for the street to empty, then moves. Every sound is suddenly an opinion: the scrape of a sandal, the knock at a door, his own breath in his chest. He has practiced at speaking for God to people. Tonight he will listen to God as a person speaking to him. He's not hunting for ammunition for tomorrow's debate. He's hunting for a word that touches the quiet center where God lives when the crowds go home. Nicodemus is not the enemy of Jesus. He is the kind of man Jesus loves to meet: careful, sincere, ready to be interrupted. If you've ever felt trapped by the role that once felt like a gift, you know this ache. You built a life that works, therefore you struggle to admit where it doesn't. You're respected for answers, therefore you hide your questions, but the God who loves you is not interested in preserving your image. He is interested in restoring your heart. Titles can open doors, only hunger walks through them. Nicodemus will knock because the new he needs cannot be scheduled into the old he knows. He reaches the threshold. A lamp breathes. A voice welcomes. The conversation will not flatter him. It will move the furniture inside his soul. He thinks he's arriving as a colleague. He will leave as a seeker, amazed at how much life still waits beyond the ladder he's climbed. The city spins on. The chamber will meet tomorrow. The chores of holiness will continue, but tonight a leader lets longing outweigh optics, and heaven smiles at the sound of his knock. He begins like a statesman, compliments first credentials tucked behind his teeth. Rabbi, we know you're from God. No one does these signs unless God is with him. It's accurate, respectful, low risk. Therefore, Nicodemus expects a peer-to-peer exchange, refined ideas, careful nuance, more light added to a room already well lit. But Jesus is not here to brighten the old room. He's here to say the room itself won't do. He answers with a sentence that detonates categories: unless a person is born from above, born again. They cannot even see the kingdom. Not try harder, not polish better, not upgrade your plan, birth, new origin, not a spiritual gym, a delivery room. Nicodemus's mind reaches for tools he trusts: reason, rule, precedent. How can a grown man be born? It's not sarcasm. It's honest confusion from a life trained to measure. Therefore, Jesus pushes past the scales and into the source. This is a work of water and spirit. Flesh makes more flesh, spirit births spirit. You don't engineer it, you receive it. Pause the scene and step into your own. You've tried patches, new planner, new app, new habit stack. But the loop stays the loop. You keep optimizing the old operating system, therefore the same crashes keep returning: shame, reboot; anger, reboot; fear, reboot. Jesus' words land like a kind insult. Your self-improvement plan is respectable, but it can't see what it most needs. Sight itself is a gift. Life itself must be given. Frame break. What if God's answer to your exhaustion isn't a ladder but a delivery? Nicodemus wants steps. Jesus offers a birth certificate from heaven's side. The man who has mastered the language of holiness hears a word that makes him a child again. Therefore, the conversation shifts from, "How do I improve?" to, "Who can make me alive?" That shift is the scandal and the rescue. Because if life must be given, then pride can't purchase it. But neither can failure disqualify it. The same door that won't admit your resume also refuses to slam on your regrets. But how? Nicodemus asks again, as we would. Jesus points to the wind. You hear it slice the night. You feel it lift the edge of your robe. You watch its effect on leaves and lamps. You can't draw it on a whiteboard. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. Therefore, control surrenders to trust. You don't manage the wind, you open the window. This is not anti-intellectual. It's anti-illusion. The illusion that you can mint spiritual life out of personal discipline alone. Discipline is good. Jesus doesn't mock it. But discipline without new birth is like painting a dead tree. The bark looks fresh, no fruit comes. New birth is sap. God's life moving where there was only structure. Structure matters. Sap is what makes it sing. Let's speak plainly. Many of us grew up on the gospel of effort. Be nice, pay taxes, recycle text back. Therefore, we confuse decency with life. Decency is lovely. Life is holy fire. Decency helps your neighbor move. Life raises dead things, marriages, consciences, futures. Jesus is not recruiting better citizens. He's making new creation, and new creation begins where we admit the old can't save us. Nicodemus hears this and feels both threatened and relieved. Threatened because new birth levels everyone, rookie and rabbi alike. Relieved because his secret ache finally has a name. Improvement kept failing him, therefore maybe improvement was never the point. Maybe he needs someone to do for him what he cannot do from inside his best behavior. Back to you. Where do you most feel the ceiling? The habit that mocks your resolutions. The apology you can't generate from willpower. The tenderness that never arrives when you command it. You can install guardrails and you should, but guardrails don't make engines. New birth does. It's God's engine in a human chest. Jesus' tone here is not scolding, it's invitational. You're Israel's teacher and you don't grasp this. Sounds like a gentle grief, not a dunk. He wants Nicodemus, not his defeat. Therefore he uses pictures, not just propositions. Wind, water, birth. Heaven is making a people who breathe God like air. The night breeze ruffles the lamp flame between them as if on cue. If you're resisting, it's likely at the same point surrender. Because new birth is not earned, it is received, therefore you cannot boast. But you also cannot be beyond reach. That threatens the parts of us addicted to control, and it rescues the parts suffocating under failure. Both the proud and the crushed are invited through the same door. Be born from above. Not try hard or trust deeper. Not collect merit, come empty. Not self-manufacture, open the window to the wind. So what does that look like at 11:47 p.m. on your couch? Honesty before God. I can't make myself alive. Breathe on me. Naming where effort has become a fig leaf. Asking the Spirit to do what no spreadsheet can. Pair it with a concrete step. Bring one area of secrecy into the light with a trusted, wise friend. Birth is messy but unmistakable. So is the first gasp of oxygen after a long underwater swim. You will know when the window is open, not because every problem evaporates, but because life moves where there was only managing. The lamp sputters, a breeze fingers the flame and sketches moving shadows on the wall. Nicodemus wants diagrams, therefore Jesus gives weather. You can predict patterns, but you cannot grab wind and put it in a jar. You don't tell the breeze where to go, you notice where it went. That doesn't insult reason, it humbles it. The kingdom is not a machine that yields to your wrench. It is a life that arrives felt, heard, seen in its effects before it is controlled. Water and spirit. Nicodemus knows ritual washings by heart, therefore Jesus reaches deeper than ritual. Not a cleaner bucket cleaner being. An ancient promise wakes up clean water on a stained conscience. A new heart where a stone one sat heavy. He's not shaming the disciplines, he's exposing their limit. Washing the outside is housekeeping. Recreating the inside is God's art. Flesh gives birth to flesh, therefore the results look like effort with a ceiling. Spirit gives birth to spirit, therefore the results look like love that wasn't in you yesterday. We love the mechanics because mechanics promise control. Steps, charts, toggles. Therefore we keep tightening bolts on a stalled engine. Jesus isn't anti-practice. He's anti-magic, anti-believing that practices themselves resurrect. Practices are sails, not wind. You raise them, but you do not generate the gust. If you've ever taped grapes to a dead vine, you know the look of fruit without life. The Spirit doesn't tape. He grafts. He moves sap. He makes what was incapable capable. So what does openness look like when you can't command God? Think sailing, not rowing. You still move your body, confession, scripture, prayer, community. But your posture changes from forcing to receiving. Confession cuts ropes you didn't know were knotting the mast. Scripture becomes oxygen, not ammunition. Silence stops the splash long enough to hear the current. Community names truth out loud where echoes once lied. Therefore, when the wind arrives, your life has somewhere to catch it. Frame break. What if your spiritual plan this week is not achieve, but receive? Nicodemus hears wind talk and feels small, therefore Jesus speaks in mercy. Being small is not failure. It's accuracy. Children inhale before they speak. You were made to live like that with God. Breathe before you perform. The Spirit is not your subcontractor. He is your source. He doesn't erase your will. He liberates it. Under His breath, obedience feels less like grinding teeth and more like warmed muscle resistance. Still real, but now you can move. You ask, how will I know it's the Spirit and not my mood? Fair question. You'll recognize Him by His wake. The wind of God leaves fruit you couldn't counterfeit for long, love that costs joy. Not nailed to circumstance, peace that doesn't make sense, patience where you once flinched. Self-control that isn't clenched jaw but quiet strength. Not perfection, overnight direction, then growth. Therefore expect both surprise and slow change. Garden speed, not microwave speed. Control will fight back. It always does. The part of you that trusts only spreadsheets will demand guarantees. But guarantees are how fear avoids faith. The Spirit offers presence, not predictability. Therefore, the invitation is simple and costly. Open the window. That means exposure. It means letting light name what darkness edited. It means receiving instead of performing, obeying instead of explaining. That is uncomfortable until the first gust fills your chest and you remember what breathing is. Let's get practical. Choose one new sail and one old rope this week. A sail, 10 minutes of unhurried honesty before God, no script, just truth. Or a psalm read out loud slowly like rain on hard ground. Or one shared confession with a trusted friend. A rope, one hidden habit you're done protecting. Cut it, delete the app, make the call, set the filter, throw out the stash schedule, the counseling. Therefore, you aren't earning the wind. You're clearing the deck for it. Nicodemus came at night because night felt safe. Now the breeze makes night holy. He will leave without a formula, but with something better, the sense that life is not a project to dominate. It is a person to welcome. Which means he can start now in the dark while the city sleeps. Which means so can you tonight on a couch where the blue light finally dims and a whisper becomes prayer. Spirit of God, breathe. Desert night. Canvas tents breathe, embers blink like tired eyes, complaints travel faster than wind. The people are exhausted of manna, of dust, of waiting. Therefore words turn sharp and sharp words turn hearts away. Then the ground seems to hiss. Serpents ribbon through the camp, fang flash, ankle bite, a sting that blooms into fire under the skin. Panic outruns prayer. Bandages herbs bargaining with pain. The venom doesn't negotiate. People fold to the sand, whispering names, trying not to be the next story told at dawn. Moses prays. God answers with a remedy that sounds wrong to logic and exactly right to mercy. Make a bronze serpent, lift it on a pole, and whoever looks will live. Therefore a craftsman hammers through the night. A shape rises in the firelight. A pole is planted where everyone can see. No ritual to perform, no fee to pay, no ranking by merit. Only this, if you are bitten, admit it. Turn your eyes and look. Looking does not earn life. It receives it. The cure is outside your body, therefore your hope must be too. Imagine the objections that can't work. I'm not that bad. Why a serpent? The symbol offends, but the invitation stands. The dying lift their gaze, therefore breath returns. No magic in the metal mercy and the God who promised. The point is trust directed by God, not optimism pointed at yourself. Looking is not staring at your wound, it is refusing to worship your injury. It is stepping out of self-salvation projects into a promise you didn't write. You don't need perfect eyesight, you need a willing neck. A glance can be a lifeline. Back in the small room, Jesus reaches for that story like a medic reaching for the exact kit you need. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, he says in so many words, "So must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes may have life." Therefore, Nicodemus's categories tilt. The remedy won't be a new rule book. It will be a raised Redeemer. Lifted up means public, means costly, means a cross that mirrors the poison we carry, sin's death coiled around our world so that trusting him breaks the coil's power. Look and Live was never about admiring a symbol. It was about surrendering to the God who saves through it. Why this picture? Because the hardest part of faith is not complexity, it's consent. To look, you must confess you're bitten. To look, you must stop treating the wound like a secret pet. To look, you must lift your eyes from your own competence, your own penance, your own curated image, and let love find you in exposure. Therefore, the cross stands where everyone can see, not hidden in a back room for elites. The ground is level at the place of looking, the respectable and the wrecked, the meticulous and the messy, the teacher at midnight and the thief by noon. Modern parallel. The 911 operator giving instructions. You would never invent press here, tilt there, count aloud. It feels too simple, but simplicity is how panic gets rescued. Or think antidote protocols. You don't bargain with venom. You receive the anti-venom prepared outside you. Faith is not generic positivity. It is precise trust in the provision God has lifted where you can reach it. Therefore, when shame burns, you don't tighten rules. You turn your face. When cynicism coils, you don't rehearse better arguments. You lift your eyes. When fear hisses, you don't white-knuckle control. You look to the one lifted up for you. Nicodemus came for insight and met a sign that demands a decision. Improvement would have let him keep his wound. Looking will change his life. He will wrestle with this. Many of us do. We want a God who audits, not a God who saves. Audits preserve hierarchies, salvation levels them. But love keeps aiming for the lifted gaze. Therefore, Jesus plants this story in the teacher's memory like a seed. The night will end, the council will convene, a cross will rise. And when it does, the remedy will not be a rumor. It will be public sufficient near. So where do you need to look today? Name one bite, the habit, the secret anger, the fear that scripts your day. Don't pet it. Don't post it. Don't pretend it's gone. Lift your eyes. A simple prayer can train the neck of your soul. Jesus lifted for me, I look to you. Pair it with a concrete move. Read the Passion narrative this week. Or sit before a cross and let the symbol do its work. Humble your pride. Quiet your panic, interrupt your self-rescue. Looking won't make you impressive. It will make you alive. The story pivots from a bronze serpent to a beating heart, for God so loved the world. We've seen signs, now we're told the motive. Love doesn't hover at a safe distance. Love moves toward. Therefore the Father sends, not spares the Son, not to audit, but to save. Nicodemus expected a syllabus. He gets a rescue plan. If love sends the Son, then the Son won't fit inside our PR strategies. He will be lifted where everyone can see, so faith can be public and grace can be received without a membership card. This is both comfort and confrontation. Comfort because the sender knows exactly who we are. Tired, tangled, sometimes two-faced, and sends anyway. Confrontation because love that saves also summons. It calls us out of the curated shadows we've learned to live in. Jesus doesn't merely adjust the rules, he switches the lighting. This is the verdict he explains in essence: light came into the world, therefore darkness got nervous. People love the dark because it hides what we're not ready to name. Frame break. Where do you prefer dimmer switches to daylight? Darkness has good branding. It promises safety, therefore we protect it. We call secrecy privacy, cynicism wisdom, and isolation boundaries, while our souls slowly starve. Exposure feels like loss of control, but it's actually the start of healing. Think medicine: you can live in denial with a polite cough, or face the scan and begin treatment. Light doesn't shame what it reveals, it treats it. Jesus says those who practice truth come to the light so it may be seen that their works are carried by God. Therefore the credit shifts too. In the light we run out of self-congratulation and start breathing gratitude. We fear exposure because we misremember God's face. We think light equals courtroom, therefore we hide. But the light here has nail-scarred hands. He came not to condemn, but to save. Condemnation is what happens when we cling to darkness like a life raft and refuse the hand that's reaching. Love is not indifferent to harm. Love invites surgery. That's why the call is not perform better, but come closer. Close enough that truth names us accurately. Close enough that grace holds us securely. Close enough that new life grows where shame once built a nest. Modern scene: your phone glows in dark mode, therefore scrolling feels private. The algorithm learns your appetites and feeds them until your appetite owns you. Or the group chat where sarcasm is currency. Honesty costs too much, therefore no one pays. Or your calendar stacked with noble tasks that keep you from the one conversation that would change everything. The light of Jesus does not cancel you, it cancels the power of what's been canceling you. But it starts with stepping into visibility before God and with one wise human who won't weaponize your confession. So how do we practice this without theatrics? Start small and real. Do a light audit this week. Where do I consistently hide? Name one place. Then move, confess to God in plain words. Tell one trusted friend what you've actually decided to bring into the light. Set one concrete boundary that agrees with your confession: filters, calendar blocks, deleted DMs, a counseling appointment. Therefore, your faith becomes embodied, less about statements, more about steps. Expect two things: a spike of fear, darkness negotiates when threatened, and a gust of peace, light stabilizes what it reveals. Garden speed again sprouts, not fireworks. Nicodemus listens as night thins toward dawn. He came to protect reputation. He leaves with an invitation to become visible. Not instantly, not perfectly, progress will look like questions in a council chamber. Then arms full of spices in a garden where courage finally pays the bill. Fear won't vanish in a single verse. It will retreat as light gets habitually chosen. That is the way faith grows. Therefore we practice truth, and therefore we come to the light, and therefore our lives begin to look like someone else is carrying them. Fear is efficient. It doesn't need a calendar invite. It shows up like a push notification in your chest. It predicts loss, therefore it hoards control. Hoarding control isolates, but isolation starves courage. Starved courage chooses the smaller hallway, therefore opportunities pass like trains you watch through glass. Miss enough trains and you start narrating your life as a person who just isn't bold, which becomes permission to stay small. That's the loop. It feels like wisdom. It's just fear with good PR. Nicodemus knows versions of this. He's trained to protect what is precious: the law, the people, the fragile peace with Rome. Protection is holy until it becomes a moat, around your own heart. Therefore, God meets him with invitations that require micro-risk. Visit at night. Ask a fair question in a hostile room. Carry spices in daylight. Notice the progression fear shrinks when exercised against. Faith isn't a personality trait. It's a practiced response. Like a muscle, it grows where it's loaded. Let's name the mechanics. Fear runs on 3 fuels: uncertainty. I don't know what will happen. Exposure. People will see the real me and cost. I'll lose something I value. Therefore, it offers 3 counterfeit comforts: over research, collect more info than action requires, over edit, draft forever. So you never deliver, and over spiritualize pray as avoidance instead of prayer as alignment. Each looks noble. None build courage. You cannot think your way out of fear that only action can starve. Scripture does not deny fear. It reassigns authority. One psalm says in essence, "The Lord is my light. Why should I live ruled by dread?" Another line to a young leader insists God doesn't hand us a spirit of timidity, but one of power, love, and a sober mind. Translation: fear is real, but it's not in charge. Therefore, disciples practice moving while afraid. Faith acts are not the absence of trembling. They are obedience with trembling included. Here's a simple field guide: beer AV. B. Breathe in name. Slow inhale, slow exhale. Say out loud, I'm afraid of Sir because I value your book. Fear often protects something good. Name it so you can steward it rather than let it steer you. R. Remember God's character. Review what you know. God is present, wise, and good, not your subcontractor, your source. He has brought you through smaller nights. He isn't quitting at this one. Act small and specific. Shrink the decision until it fits inside today. Send the email, book the call, tell the truth in 1 sentence. Small obedience is how courage gets reps. V. Voice it to a person. Secrets stiffen fear's spine. Tell one wise friend the move you're making and by when. Ask them to reflect back reality when your imagination starts writing horror films. E. Exit the loop with gratitude. After the act, name one thing you learned and thank God aloud. Gratitude interrupts the brain's threat-only channel and keeps you available for the next step. Add one more practice: the 2-column journal. On the left, fear says write its exact script. On the right, faith says write a grounded counterline: truth, not bravado. Example: fear says if you speak, you'll lose status. Faith says if you stay silent against what's wrong, you'll lose yourself. Read the right column twice. Body matters too. Courage is not only cognitive, it's physical. Shoulders down. Unclench your jaw. Put feet flat on the floor. Pray in that posture. Your nervous system listens to your body. Give it a message: we can move forward. Pair this with a time box: 10 minutes for action, no more analysis until after the move. Therefore, you teach your brain that safety does not only mean avoid, it can also mean obey. Expect pushback. Fear negotiates when threatened. It will offer you later. It will offer you 10 more articles. It will offer you a nicer, vaguer version of the truth. But remember Nicodemus's path: question at night, question in public, honor in daylight. He didn't jump from whisper to megaphone. He kept choosing the next faithful step. Therefore, his love eventually paid the bill that fear refused to pick up. If you want a weekly rhythm, try this: 3 courage reps. Write 3 micro acts you will do by Friday, each doable in 15 minutes or less. Example 1. Text the apology. 2. Share 1 honest sentence with your spouse or friend. 3. Put 1 private habit in the light with a boundary. When Friday arrives, review. Celebrate the act, not the outcome. You can't control outcomes, you can steward obedience. Finally, borrow Nicodemus's night. Make room after the noise for a 10-minute wind window. Sit with God. Ask, where am I shrinking? What is my next small light step? Listen. Then move before you overthink it. Courage rarely shouts. It usually knocks softly and waits to be let in. Let it in tonight so that daylight can find you carrying something heavier than fear love. Festival week swells the city until the alleys feel like arteries. Temple guards weave through crowds with orders in their ears and uncertainty in their faces. They were sent for a simple task: bring the Galilean in. Therefore they listen for trouble, but instead they hear a voice that doesn't sound like trouble at all. By the time they reach the chamber, their hands are empty and their minds are full. The room notices the empty hands first. Questions slice the air. Whereas he is not information-seeking, it's accusation with a question mark. The officers describe what they heard, words that carried more weight than weapons. And the leaders roll their eyes so hard the ceiling could feel it. The crowd is gullible, they say. The masses are cursed, they say. Therefore the council reassures itself that truth lives only inside this room. Power loves to believe it is also the sole custodian of reality. Mockery warms the chamber. Someone smirks. Have any of the important people believed? Translation belief is a status badge, not a heart decision. Therefore dissent is not refuted. It is shamed. You know this tactic. Meetings where certainty grows louder than accuracy. Threads where sarcasm becomes policy. The room leans toward a verdict that was pre-written in the hallway. Then a quieter voice threads the noise. Nicodemus doesn't preach, he practices. He asks a question shaped like a guardrail. Doesn't our law require us to hear a person before we judge him? It's procedural, yes, but beneath the procedure is mercy. Due process is love with a clipboard. It slows the stampede long enough for truth to breathe. This is courage in its early dialect, not a manifesto, a fairness question. Therefore, the room must either honor the law they claim to keep, or reveal that the verdict came first and the law is costume. They choose the costume. Laughter goes brittle. Are you from Galilee too? It's a jab, not an argument, regional contempt masquerading as insight. They cite a slogan about prophets and geography, but even their slogan leaks. Prejudice is always lazy. It saves time by skipping evidence. The mockery lands like a slap you can't bruise. Nicodemus feels the temperature drop around his chair. He has not switched sides, he has asked for honesty. Therefore he becomes suspect. Let's freeze the frame. You've sat in that room, the one where a person is tried in absentia, where the story hardens before facts arrive. You feel it in your body first. Shoulders tighten, throat dries, breath goes shallow. You scan for allies and mostly find silence. You don't need a speech, you need one sentence that rehumanizes the person in question and recenters truth. Have we heard their side? What's our evidence? Can we slow this down until we've actually listened? Early courage is often a clarifying sentence delivered at room temperature. Notice what Nicodemus doesn't do. He doesn't throw the table, doesn't hashtag the moment, doesn't flee to protect his brand. He places one legal beam under a collapsing conversation. Therefore, the weight must either shift to fairness or crash publicly. His question exposes whether this is about truth or tribe. The sneer that follows answers it. But sneers, paradoxically, are encouragements in disguise. They prove you've touched the live wire. When mockery replaces reasoning, you've located the idol. Faith grows here in inches. In the first meeting, Nicodemus learned that life starts as gift, not grind. In this meeting, he learns that gifts become visible as justice. Born from above people ask for light in public rooms. They defend process because process protects people. This is not bureaucracy. This is neighbor love with a spine. When we say here before judgment, we are insisting that image bearers not be turned into headlines or hashtags without witness. That insistence will always annoy those who prefer outcomes to integrity. Modern parallels multiply. The Slack channel where a colleague is framed by rumor. Do you add a laughing reaction or ask for specifics? The family text where a sibling is reduced to their worst week. Do you pile on or invite a phone call, the church meeting where the decision is rushed because delay feels weak? Do you equate speed with faith or remember that patience is a fruit of the Spirit? Courage can sound like I'm for truth and for them. Can we make room for both? Therefore, you defend the person and the principle at once. Expect the room to test you. Don't be naive, they'll say. Don't slow us down. Don't you care about the cause, but love refuses to choose between cause and person. Jesus never did. He could move crowds and still stop for one face under a tree. He could confront corruption and still eat at a table with messy people. Nicodemus's question is a small imitation of that largeness. Makes space for a hearing. Light doesn't shortcut, it shines. If your heart thrums at this, try a practice. Write your one-line courage. Pre-draft the sentence you will say the next time a room tilts toward injustice. Keep it clear, calm, short. What facts are we using? Have we listened to them directly? This seems fast. Can we wait 24 hours and invite them to speak, then pair it with a posture, relaxed shoulders, steady tone, open hands on the table? You're not the hero, you're the hinge. Hinges don't shout, they turn doors. The council dismisses Nicodemus with a joke that isn't funny. The meeting adjourns, but something has shifted. Courage did not win applause. It planted a seed. Seeds do their best work underground. Therefore, when the darkest afternoon arrives and a body needs honoring, the man who once asked for a hearing will give one with spices and linen and daylight. Rooms can brand you a fool for fairness. Resurrection will brand you faithful. Jerusalem doesn't sleep, it staggers. Torches have moved like comets through garden trees, steel-kissed skin. Friends ran by morning, rumors outrun sandals. A teacher is bound, a trial is staged, a verdict is rehearsed. Inside this churn, certain leaders who once believed in whispers but feared confession. You can hear John's aside about loving human applause more than God's approval feel. The floor tilt beneath their careful feet. Secret kept them safe, therefore secret kept them small. Joseph of Arimathea watches the proceedings with a conscience that won't nap. Luke calls him a good, righteous man who hadn't consented to the plan. Therefore his heart keeps thudding the same line, do something. Nicodemus hears the same drum under his ribs. For months, admiration had been a private discipline, night visits. Cautious questions, procedural fairness. But the cross turns privacy into a decision point. Delay is no longer neutral. Delay is denial in a tuxedo. Let's name the calculus. Stay silent, therefore your seat remains warm and your invitations intact. But your soul shrinks by a size you can feel. Use back channels, therefore you soothe conscience with plausible deniability, but little changes and the body on the hill is still alone. Step forward publicly, therefore you risk position, reputation, synagogue standing, perhaps burial, defilement before Sabbath, but love becomes a verb and fear loses voting rights. The math is cruel to comfort and kind to the person you are becoming. Joseph moves first. He goes to Pilate for the body. That sentence sounds polite. It is a detonator. Rome killed with pageantry. Asking for a victim's body under Rome's nose is not administrative. It is allegiance. It is saying, count me with him when counting costs you. Therefore a garden tomb opens as an option. Linen is purchased. Timers begin, Sabbath approaches. The window is short. The weight of courage is measured in minutes. What about Nicodemus? The man who loved night now chooses daylight tasks. He arrives carrying myrrh and aloes, lavish, heavy, unmistakable. This is not a private donation. It is visible devotion. Spices are a sermon you can smell down the alley. I honor him. I will be named with him. I will spend to love him. He who once asked for due process now offers due honor. The hands that once gestured in a council chamber now lift a broken arm with reverent strength. Failure had its hour. Love will have its burial. Frame break. What spices would your love carry if you stopped waiting for safer timing? Every allegiance act has a cost column and a harvest column. Cost awkward conversations, lost favor, new labels, invitations that stop arriving. Harvest a clean conscience, a truer self, a clearer witness, the strange lightness of being aligned. You cannot have the harvest without the cost. Trying to do so is how Christians become commentators instead of disciples. Nicodemus teaches us that love pays bills in public. It writes checks with your name in the memo line. Modern parallels stack. You sign the character reference that others only whisper they agree with. You put your name on a complaint about a corrupt process instead of forwarding screenshots in the shadows. You refuse to exaggerate numbers even if bonus season punishes honesty. You tell your family kindly and clearly that your allegiance to Jesus will set certain priorities that may disappoint them, and then you keep showing up with patient love. Secret admiration is sweet. Public allegiance is transforming. If this makes your stomach drop, you're normal. Courage isn't the absence of nausea, it's motion while nauseous. So pre-decide your if-then. If the pile-on starts, then I will ask for evidence. If conscience tugs, then I will move before the tug becomes a knot. If a person is being reduced to a rumor, then I will humanize them with a sentence. Pack your spices now, a budget line for generosity that costs an hour set aside for presents. Where it's inconvenient, the email draft that says the true thing in clean words. You will be tempted to say later when it's less risky. But the cross is never less public tomorrow. The window closes, Sabbath comes, stones roll. Someone must be the person who carries weight before the light fades. Nicodemus learned in the chamber how to ask for fairness. He learns in the garden how to love with gravity. Therefore the arc completes from night to light, from question to courage, from secret to seen. Resurrection will vindicate him, but he doesn't wait for Sunday to begin loving on Friday. Bring this home. Choose one allegiance act this week, specific and visible. Name Jesus where you've only hinted. Align with a person truth has made unpopular. Open your calendar and wallet in a way that costs, not performative, practical, not a speech, a step. You may lose a seat, you will gain a self. That is the exchange every disciple learns to make. Nicodemus did it with spices that perfumed a garden. You can do it with a signature, a sentence, a schedule, a sum. The hill looks like a skull even before the bodies climb it. Rome prefers messages you can read without subtitles, therefore crosses rise at eye level with the road. Wood groans. Hammers answer. Nails speak in a language every nervous system understands. Soldiers divide garments like office furniture after a layoff, impersonal, efficient. Above the middle cross, a board announces a joke that isn't funny, written in 3 languages so no one misses it. Power thinks it's making an example. Heaven is making an exchange. We don't know where Nicodemus is at this hour, whether he stands behind a crowd shoulder counting breaths or hears reports echo down stone corridors. We know the city feels it. A teacher who healed the unimportant is displayed like a threat. The sign calls him a king. The posture calls him defeated. Both are true, but not the way Rome intended. He is lifted up, therefore the snake on a pole story stops being a metaphor and becomes a world-sized antidote. The poison hisses. Love doesn't negotiate, love absorbs. The scene is precise, not theatrical. A mother watches the kind of pain that rewires a parent's brain. Women who never left keep their ground. A friend who stayed within arm's reach receives a trust he never auditioned for. Soldiers wet a sponge not out of mercy but to keep a dying man alive long enough to finish dying. Religious calendars will soon require bodies off wood. The clock is a drum. The one who taught about light hangs in exposure that strips even dignity. Shame does its efficient work, therefore grace must do something greater. Modern life pretends we don't need Good Friday. We curate. We optimize. We push updates that promise to fix the crash. But some problems aren't bugs. They're the operating system. Violence isn't a glitch. It's what fear builds when given tools. Bitterness isn't a typo, it's what self-salvation tastes like after 5 years. You cannot nuance venom out of your veins. Therefore, the cross is not an illustration. It's an antidote administered in public. The one truly innocent man occupies the guilty center so guilty people can walk out with his verdict. The hours collapse into a final clarity. He has fed the hungry, therefore he will thirst. He has lifted others, therefore he will be brought low. He has carried burdens, therefore a beam will carry him. He does not back away. He bows into the will he prayed for in a garden. When the moment arrives, it is not a whimper but a finish line crossed with torn lungs. A cry rides the wind short, final, victorious. Work completed. Debt cancelled. Curtain somewhere else in the city argues with itself and tears. A soldier will pierce to be sure. What flows will sound like a footnote but read like a promise, water and blood cleansing and life, the symbols of a new people already beginning. If you want to know what love looks like when it grows all the way up, stare here. Love that refuses shortcuts. Love that stays present in pain it could avoid. Love that receives nails instead of keeping score. The mockers keep their rhythm because mockery is easier than wonder. The indifferent watch for a minute, then remember a task. The secret admirers feel their ribs threaten to split. The cross sorts the heart without raising its voice. Therefore, each watcher is offered a choice: step nearer in allegiance, or step back into the crowd that narrates from a safe distance. This is where Nicodemus's first conversation returns with consequence. Born from above was not a theory. It was a path to walk under a darkening sky. Wind you can't control has brought him to an hour he can't avoid. The serpent lifted as a rescue becomes the person lifted as a king. And the invitation is the same as in the desert: look and live. He will do something with this hour, if not here, then moments from now, when permissions are secured and linen waits and a garden opens. Therefore fear that once wrote his schedule must renegotiate its contract. It loses. Bring it home to your own hill, the one without soldiers but full of choices. Someone in your orbit is suffering. You cannot fix them, therefore you are tempted to back away until the crisis becomes more convenient. Don't love walks uphill. Or maybe the hill is your habit, the one that nails you predictably each week. You want hacks. The cross offers death to the old and birth to the new. That means naming your sin without euphemisms and trusting the finished work more than your unfinished feelings. You don't add to it, you align with it. That alignment looks like repentance with legs, amends made, boundaries set, patterns interrupted, help invited. Above all, Good Friday gives you a spine for costly kindness. Love as sentiment hides when it's expensive. Love as allegiance pays the bill in linen and spice. You will not feel ready. You will not be applauded. But you will be aligned with a king whose crown cut his skin, whose victory didn't wait for Sunday to start, whose last breath sounded like the beginning of yours. Therefore, when the moment comes, move. The window closes, the stone rolls, the garden waits for people whose love has learned the weight of wood. Late afternoon drops a long shadow over the city. Markets snap shut like books closing mid-sentence. Sabbath is racing the sun to the horizon, therefore everything holy must hurry without hurrying. Joseph of Arimathea steps into a corridor where air feels like decision. He asks the governor for a body. It reads like a formality. It lands like a confession. Count me with him, alive or dead, permission is granted. A door inside Joseph opens that he didn't know was locked. Nicodemus arrives carrying weight, myrrh, and aloes in a measure you don't hide under a cloak. It's lavish, therefore it's loud. He could have sent a servant with a quiet pouch. He brings the whole costly sentence himself. Spice dust freckles his cuffs. The scent moves ahead of him like an announcement the man of night is acting in daylight. This is worship that pays the bill. They meet at the cross, where bodies are not supposed to be beautiful. The work is reverent and awkward, therefore human. Unnail what power nailed. Tilt and lift, support the weight that once supported others. The skin tells the story a courtroom refused to hear. There is no soundtrack, only breath and linen's hush. When hands tremble, they keep moving. Love does not stop for its own heartbeat. A garden nearby offers a new tomb. It wasn't bought for this man, but love borrows without asking for credit. Linen spreads clean, long, ready. Therefore they begin the old holy choreography: wrap, pour, fold, bind. The spices are not perfume for the living. They are honor for the dead, a testimony that a body made in God's image deserves dignity, even when Rome says otherwise. Nicodemus measures strips by taught instinct. Rabbi fingers become undertaker's hands. His robe smudges, he doesn't wipe it. All through the work the clock taps their shoulders. Sun slipping, Sabbath approaching. There is pressure but not panic. The pace is prayer. Lift here, hold there. Joseph steadies the head while Nicodemus smooths linen at the shoulders. They do not preach, they practice. They do not trend, they tend. The world can keep its noise. The garden is holding a quieter revolution, fear becoming faith, one fold at a time. Imagine their inner talk. If the council had eyes here, they'd say we betrayed the brand. If Rome is watching, they'll say we've chosen a failed king. Both might be right by one story, but love is telling another. Therefore, they refuse to let headlines decide holiness. They are not managing optics. They are honoring a man who once spoke of wind and birth and light. You don't honor such a man with shortcuts. The stone waits round, unromantic, demanding. Moving it takes more back than poetry. They shoulder together, therefore it rolls. The scrape sounds like a door closing and a vow being kept. When the opening narrows, one of them places the last strip of linen like a kiss that refuses drama. This is not performance. This is promise. We will not let shame write the final paragraph. Frame break. What would your love look like if it had to be measured not by sentiment, but by weight? The garden exhales. The world will call this failure, but the smell lingers like a prophecy. Myrrh holds to skin that can't hold to life yet. They stand a moment because grief deserves one. Then they leave because Sabbath commands rest, and because rest is an act of trust when you wish you could work your way to a different ending. The path out of the garden is the same stones as the path in, but both men are not the same. Night students graduated in daylight. What changed? Nicodemus. Not a better argument, but a clearer allegiance. He learned that secrecy preserves status, therefore it suffocates love. He learned that law without mercy becomes a mask, but mercy that honors law becomes justice. He learned that worship sometimes smells like spice and looks like labor. He learned that faith pays in public what it first believed in private. Bring the lens to today. Costly honor might be a signature on a document others fear to touch. It might be driving across town to sit with someone no one visits because gossip did its work too well. It might be the money you'd rather save rerouted to relieve a burden that isn't your responsibility but is your opportunity. It might be your name beneath a sentence that defends the dignity of a person everyone finds easier to mock. Don't post the act. Perform it. Let the fragrance do the talking. You won't feel ready. You'll watch the clock. Your stomach will rehearse objections. Courage will still feel like nausea with a mission. Do it anyway. Jesus' body is beyond your care, but his brothers and sisters are not. The garden is wherever a human needs honor, and the world is in a hurry to do the minimum. The stone is whatever weight must be moved so love can reach a place it's never reached with your hands before. Sabbath settled over the city, therefore work ceased. But in heaven's story, seeds were already lifting their heads in the dark. The spices that mark death will soon be outsung by a voice that refuses to stay buried. Resurrection will name Nicodemus faithful, but faithfulness didn't wait for resurrection to be true. It wore linen dust and smelled like myrrh. It carried weight and didn't ask to be seen. It was born in a night conversation and grew up in a garden where fear had nothing left to say. Morning comes the ordinary way. Coffee ring on the table. Calendar pings like a flock of metallic birds. Your commute is a slow river of red tail lights, therefore your thoughts try to swim away. Last night's courage feels romantic at midnight. At 8:10 a.m. it feels expensive. You promised God light, therefore your phone suggests shadows. This is where faith lives, not in the chamber's drama or the garden's perfume, but in traffic slack and kitchen sinks. Born from above isn't a mood, it's a practiced path. Let's make the path walkable. 3 layers, daily rhythms. Weekly anchoring, in-the-moment pivots. Daily open the window. Start with 10 unhurried minutes and the simplest breath prayer, Spirit of God, breathe. Read a short section of John 3 or 19 out loud. Let the syllables strike air, therefore your body remembers this is real. Name one hiding place in plain words. Send one message that brings it to the light with a wise person. End with gratitude, the small, not the spectacular. Gratitude is light's afterglow. It keeps the window open after the breeze moves on. Weekly pack your spices. Choose one act of costly honor with your name on it. Not performative, practical. A signature you've delayed because optics. A visit to someone your circle quietly exiled. A financial gift that trims comfort but grows love. Put it on the calendar by Wednesday, therefore Saturday doesn't arrive with only good intentions. Pair this with the 2-column journal you practiced, fear says versus faith says. Keep it brief. Let last week's faith line script this week's move. In the moment, 1 line courage plus BRAV, rooms tilt suddenly. Threads stampede. Your heart does math, status on one side, truth on the other. Therefore pre-draft your sentence and keep it ready. Have we heard their side? What facts are we using? Then run the BRAVE loop. Fast, breathe, and name. Remember God's character, act small, voice it to a person, exit with gratitude. You will feel fear, negotiate, let love hold the pen. Frame break, if a camera followed your next 7 days, where would it catch you? Choosing light.